up next, the Iron Horse up at Cardiff celebrates with a lot of NOLW balloons. Plus, there's a lot of celebrations go on as the NOLW Grand Final is just hours away. And plus, we'll have a look at classic sporting flashbacks from 1996. It's coming up next here on NBN's local sports news. Good afternoon. My name's Conklin McLeod of NBN's local sports news. Today, thousands of locals across the Iron Horse at Lake Macquarie celebrate with a lot of balloons as part of the NOLW Grand Final. Plus, we're just hours away from the big one. And we'll have classic local sporting moments from 1996. But first, a lot of locals right across the Iron Horse at Lake Macquarie managed to have a lot of balloons as part of the NOLW Grand Final between the Knights and the Eels, which will be on in just hours' time. Because of that, I managed to interview just only one local today. And of course, don't forget you can catch the NOLW Grand Final this afternoon, right here on 9 NBN. And of course, my tips are for the Newcastle Knights to beat the Eels. And of course, it's a reference to the 2001 Grand Final, which was 21 years ago, but this time it's the women. Well, rise and shine. It'll be battle of the two sides in the NOLW Grand Final. With the Newcastle Knights and the Parramatta Eels taking on against each other this afternoon. And of course, the Knights, last season's wooden spooners, now, of course, this year's becoming their best season ever. And of course, they're hoping to take out the NOLW Premiership Trophy with a win over the Eels. And also, since then, the Knights have named their unchanged lineup for their clash against the Eels in this afternoon's NOLW Grand Final, with Tamika Upton as well as Bobby Law, as well as Kira Dibb, Jessie Southwell, and Caitlin Johnston, and Millie Boyle as well. And also Casey Badger is the referee. So who do you reckon will win in the NOLW Grand Final?
The Knights.
I'd say Penrith.
Penrith? Yeah.
And of course, last week the Knights put the Dragons to the sword in the preliminary final, beating them with a huge 30-6 victory to go through to the NOLW Grand Final. And of course, my tip is for the Knights to beat the Eels in this afternoon's NOLW Grand Final. Conklin McLeod, NBN News. Well, there's good news for the Newcastle District Cricket, and of course, it started yesterday, and of course, it's due to wrap up in March next year. And also, it's going to become one heck of a good one. still on grand finals, and of course the Hunters NPL men's and women's grand finals is on an hour's time. Meanwhile, the grand final of the men's competition between Maitland and Lambton is on at 2 o'clock, followed by the one between Warners Bay and Newcastle Olympic at 5. Still to come with the best local sporting highlights from 1996.
To see your dreams come true, and the reason that we're here today is just because of you. This is our town, it's here that we're born and bred. We've been through the rough times, been through the tough times, know about the good times ahead. We know how to do it your way, build it up in your own hometown, make it grow with the people you know, people who won't let you down. You know where you're going, and we wanna go with you. Wanna keep it growing, wanna keep it going, and we know where you're going to. This is our town, it's here that we're born and bred. Wanna see you growing, wanna see you going, wanna keep you moving ahead. This is our town, it belongs to you and me, and the Newcastle permanent is our society. Hey, this is our town. Hey, this is our town. Our town, our town. The big red ball from the bush to the bay. Yes, it's Lotto. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. It's the big one you want. It's the game for you. 'Cause it's the big red ball that makes dreams come true. Dreams come true. Dreams come true. The big red ball. The big red ball. It's the big red ball that makes dreams come true. Wake up in the morning, gotta get because the Herald is the best way to start your day.
Let's go back to the year 1996. And of course, New South Wales Country secured their first title in since 1994. And also, New South Wales secured a victory over Queensland.
The Wildfires shocked the visitors in the first minute with a willingness to run the ball. Nathan Friss's broken field running rewarded with a spectacular try finished by winger Chris Henderson. But their joy was short-lived. Canberra's tight head leading to Doug Stewart scoring under the sticks. With a glut of possession, his centre partner Andy McGrath crossed for a 5-pointer minutes later. Then a dominant forward pack claimed their share of the spoils. Newcastle's commitment couldn't be questioned, but it failed to halt the onslaught. The Kookaburras leading 29-8 at the break. Canberra's monstrous forward Mike continued in the second term, producing the first of another 3 tries. With such a solid platform, their backs also enjoyed plenty of freedom, although the Wildfires showed what they were capable of given enough ball. Christian Taylor's effort followed by outside centre Brad Osman, who crossed for a late consolation, but it was to no avail, Canberra winning by 28 points.
The Knights' 42-0 drubbing of the Gold Coast obviously caught the attention of Origin selectors on both sides of the border. One surprise selection, Adam Muir at lock, with Jim Dimmick on the bench.
Adam's been playing very good football, and it's a big confidence boost for him personally.
All 4 Knights in the Blues camp passed their medicals. Andrew Johns is at hooker, Jamie Ainscoe on the bench, having never played Origin football. Not so the Chief, who has appeared in every match since his debut in 1992.
With the calibre of people that are here and the amount of experience and representative games they play, I think they'll have plenty of composure, we'll have no problems there.
And Queensland selectors have placed their faith in Robbie O'Davis, who maintains his spot in the Maroons outfit at the expense of Willie Kahn. Malcolm Reilly says the selection of 5 Knights is a coup for the club, competing against Super League-aligned players.
People said, well, you know, they wouldn't be in if it wasn't for the absence of those other players. There's no excuse this time. The guys have got in there on merits.
The Knights will rest this weekend because of the split round. Their next encounter will be against Auckland. Robert Obadia, NBN News.
Despite the rain, the Fijians were all smiles this afternoon as they paid a visit to the Blackbutt Nature Reserve. There they had their first encounter with some Australian koalas, their excitement and enthusiasm evident. The tour aims to expose the Fijian team to some tougher competition while increasing their awareness of new trends in Australian netball. The team will play a range of representative teams along the North Coast and into Queensland, departing Newcastle for Port Macquarie on Sunday morning. Meanwhile, day 2 of the State Hockey Carnival continued in Newcastle today, some heavy downpours not deterring the players. Teams from Wollumbar in the north down to Albury in the south are taking part in the 3-day event, competing in open and junior divisions. This afternoon, the Wollumbar took on Westmead in the open girls, with Broadmeadow taking on Grafton. Competition finishes tomorrow afternoon. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
Boasting thousands of members and drawing in big state competitions, the Newcastle Netball Association feels it's a worthy cause for a council loan. After 15 years lobbying for a pavilion to replace a cramped 1940s building at National Park, the association has given up hope of a grant, frozen at the last change of council, but has asked to borrow $250,000 for a new building.
We're bitterly disappointed, but of course we're going to pursue this matter even further, and when we can have a look at those budget papers, we're going to look closely at where Council has allocated funds and try and rationalise those type of things.
Car parking and grounds around the National Park courts are also falling into disrepair, prompting safety concerns from association members. Netballers have sunk $750,000 into all-weather playing courts, which are open to the public and see themselves providing a civic service. Their latest knockback has stirred deeper concerns.
If we were men, that might be a different exercise altogether, because you've only got to look around at what has been done for some of the male sports at the drop of a hat over a short period of time, and yet here we are, we've been struggling for 15 years to get a facility suitable for our members, predominantly female.
Exactly, yeah. This isn't just a spite over one.
A former Australian featherweight champion, Lance Hobson, died after suffering a brain hemorrhage during a bout in Melbourne last week. He's gone, but not forgotten. The boxing world today announcing the Lance Hobson Memorial Trophy to be staged in Newcastle later this month as a fundraiser for homeless kids.
Lance today, if he was here, he'd be just so overwhelmed, because he was so caring about things like that. He used to come home and say, "Dad, you know, I feel lucky I've got a good place to stay, but there's kids out in the street and that have got nothing, you know."
The trophy tournament on the 27th of May will see boxing return to Newcastle's basketball stadium for the first time since the late 1980s. With fundraising support across the sporting spectrum, promoter Bill Mordy says it'll be an annual event.
No matter where we're fighting or where we're scheduled to fight, we will be here in Newcastle at the same time every 12 months with the same object to raise money to help those homeless kids on behalf of the late Lance Hobson.
Star billing on the 5-bout program will be expatriate South African November Nishingala. A challenger will be named in the next 2 days for the fiery featherweight, who's currently number 6 on the IBF World Rankings. In their first home game this season, the Falcons crashed to earth, barely managing 69 points in a dismal performance against Brisbane. Away last week, and despite better form, the Falcons went down again to Illawarra. Tomorrow night, they return to the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, determined to restore the faith of their fans, taking on old rivals, the Sydney Kings.
We have to make amends for our last 2 games, and the Sydney Kings dropped their last 2 games as well, so they're going to be flat out. And, you know, earlier in the year they beat us with the Leicester team, then we had another good hit out here. And I'm sure both teams can't wait to get on the court and get at each other.
The new mix of players has been putting in plenty of time on the court this week to make sure they don't disappoint.
And we do owe them a better game. It was our first home game, a few nerves, a few jitters, but then we've got that out of the way now, and hopefully we'll give them a great performance against Sydney.
A win tomorrow night will give the Falcons a 3-3 record for the season and help reinstate the home court advantage they should enjoy.
Falcons returned to their old hunting ground last night, but it was New Mexico State University that looked more at home at Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium. Falcons import David Van Dyke turned the tables on his countrymen, starring in defence and attack. He was ably supported by the Falcons' fringe players who were given much-needed court time. Ben Pepper, the team's top rebounder and scorer. The teammates, Reese and Moore, also found some form as the Falcons cruised to a 3-point lead at half-time. That gap got bigger as the game got longer. Tobias Lampkin offering the only resistance, top scorer for the game with 26 points. The Falcons won by 17, but the victory was secondary to the practice the team had against the zone defence, which Hobart will use this Friday. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Muir copped plenty of punishment early last night, but came back in the best possible fashion. Combining with Harrigan and Andrew Johns amongst others, Muir evaded his Newcastle teammate Jamie Ainscough to produce the match winner. A reoccurring foot injury will keep him out of tonight's encounter, while Harrigan will be used sparingly. The Johns brothers are expected to start. A full replay of the Souths game tonight from 11:30. In surfing, around 150 hit the water at the Cliff this morning for the opening rounds of the Cooter Egan Surf Classic. All made the most of the 1 to 1.5 metre swell, with the finals to be contested tomorrow afternoon. In cricket, Phil Stambridge has been named Newcastle's Players' Player for season 95-96. The Australian country rep was the association's leading run scorer, while Steve Story was Player of the Year. And in netball, the Newcastle Flyers have maintained their unbeaten record in the inter-district competition. Today they repelled Charlestown, winning the local derby 33-24. Although winning in Wollongong last year, the notorious Snake Pit has proved a stumbling block for the Falcons over the years. Illawarra's victory was built on a solid first-half performance, leading by 14 at the break. Imports Marcus Timmins and Andre Lafleur doing the damage inside and out. 15 points from Falcons captain Butch Hayes brought up his 3,000 in the NBL, while David Van Dyke put in another commendable performance with a match-high 30 points. But in the end, it was the Hawks by 9.
It's been a tough few weeks for the Newcastle Knights, and the record books don't lie. 1 win from 7 matches. Earlier this week, it appeared that bad luck was set to continue with injury concerns to 3 players, but at last the Knights have good news to report.
Mark Glanville's neck's okay. Romeo Davis has come through, and Brand Gooden's starting, so everything's fine.
On Sunday, Newcastle play Illawarra at Marathon Stadium. The sides last met in Coffs Harbour in a pre-season game. The Steelers won that match, but have since struggled in the Optus Cup, winning only 5 from 17.
They've absolutely nothing to lose, so they're going to come up here and they're going to move the ball about. They'll play a lot of open football, and we really have got to be ready for them.
Sunday's game on NBN at 4 o'clock. Highfields had plenty to prove in this afternoon's qualifying final. Second after the minor rounds, the team was determined to get to the grand final the easy way. In blustery conditions, the home side ran with the wind in the opening term and used it to the best of their ability. But Hamilton did attacking of its own, and when the ball found Harry James, the Warriors were up 1-0. 5 minutes later, and the visitors almost had their second, but Craig Shenko scrambled. Chances also for Highfields. But despite their fair share of opportunities, the Wolves couldn't convert. Until Todd McManus split the defence to lock it all up. More than 130 motorbike riders from New South Wales, Victoria and the ACT were at Awabba today for the Lake Macquarie Motorbike Club Championships. Competitors fought against the clock in several age divisions. In the junior 125 and 100cc 10-minute moto, Western's Chad Reed held off the challengers to lead the event from start to finish. The weekend's racing is the highlight of the club's calendar. There will now be a short recess for minor alterations to the track. One game last night in the Newcastle Men's Hockey Premiership, Norths flogged the Tigers, while the Castle Lakers men's softball team played its first match of the season today, beating the Dolphins 2-0. Minor Premiers Western held the NBN Soccer League Minor Premiership Cup high today, but determined to add one more honour to their list, the Bears took to the field and almost immediately found the net. That shot astray, so too the Bears' other first half attempts as the sides went to the break scoreless, but Western finished strongly, winning 2-0. The Warriors will now play Highfields next weekend for the other spot in the grand final after the Wolves were convincing in last night's elimination semi. Highfields beat Deloraine 4-1 with 3 second-half goals. Success for Adamstown in its last home game this season. The Rosebuds beat Bonnyrigg 3-0. Newcastle is through to the Inter-District Division 1 Grand Final in netball. Last night the Flyers scored a 3-goal victory over Campbelltown. A great weekend for the Castle Lakers Softball Club. The women flogged the ACT Academy last night, while the men did the same to the Bandits today. And the Barley Raceway revved into life today. The St George Motorcycle Club from Sydney staging a 4-stroke event, and the competition attracted riders from Queensland, Victoria and scores from New South Wales. And hidden beneath the disguise of dust further down the track, the Newcastle Sporting Car Club held its Carnacross meeting. Vehicles of all types raced against the clock, with competitors trying to avoid penalties for hitting circuit tyres. Lake supporters came from everywhere today, and the big crowd got exactly what it came for, with the locals up 22 points to 6 at half-time. But the Lions did most of the attacking early in the second term, their initial raid thwarted only by a late penalty. But seconds later, Gary Bray broke through, and it was 22 points to 10. David Smith surprised everyone, and it was a 13-point ball game. And with 20 minutes left, the Seagulls put it out of reach when Craig Hibbert found a flying Daniel Lewis. Lakes advanced to next weekend's major semi-final clash with Western Suburbs, while it's now sudden death for Souths. They play Curry on Friday night.
Back into the stride once more, together with Paul Halligan. Long time since the PGA side have had the football.
The Chief is one of the best but strongest men in rugby league. He's played for the Knights, represented Australia, and also he's captained New South Wales into the State of Origin.
The Player of the Year award is the highest individual honour in the Newcastle Rugby League. Judged by the representative selectors, it honours the season's best and fairest. All will be known on Wednesday night with a tally of the final votes, and while it's the form teams, Wests and Lakes, who have done most of the scoring this year, players from the other sides have also been among the points. To round 13, the Bulldogs' Chris Cole and the Seagulls' David Smith headed the scoring, and the other challengers?
Mark Jones, Steve Willett and probably Darren Ford, and probably another outsider would be Scott Robinson from Toronto.
One of the big late movers is expected to be Souths veteran Darren Ford. The halfback has been the key to the Lions' growing premiership hopes. Other awards on the night include the Players' Player, Representative Player, Coach of the Year and the season's Rookie of the Year award. That's sponsored by the Newcastle Knights.
It's an award they give and the player gets an opportunity to trial with the Knights, so that's a very prestigious award there.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Australian rugby technical advisor Brian O'Shea was at the number one sports ground last night, keen to call the shots. Special training session for the Newcastle Wildfires proved invaluable. The lesson should pay off tomorrow.
He took the forwards through scrummaging technique, and with the youth and the inexperience that we have in the forwards, they've learnt a great deal from that session last night.
The Wildfires are out of the race for the finals, but hope to be the surprise packet in the last few rounds.
And the players will continue on, and I think will show great benefits from the year and the experience.
It's the last minor round of the Newcastle Rugby League this weekend. Tomorrow, Curry is at home to Central. Maitland will play its last game of the season against minor premiers Wests. And on Sunday, the Bay tackle Toronto, Cessnock meets Souths, while Lakes will clash with Waratah Mayfield. The Seagulls are backing up from that Tuesday night thriller at Harker Oval. They lost to the Rosellas in the dying stages, 22 points to 20. Softball and the Castle Lakers play their first game of the season this weekend. The women clash with the Sharks on Saturday, while the men are at home to the Dolphins. The club launched season 96-97 earlier this week with promises of big things on the diamond. And the NBL may still be in Olympic recess, but the Falcons and Kings will still be on court this weekend. On Sunday, they will entertain at Broadmeadow in a charity match for young quadriplegic Matthew Carmody. The match at Carl Oval counted for little in the wash-up of the season. Waratah well and truly out of calculations. Lakes guaranteed a top two finish. But the Seagulls were far from impressive. The first half marred with a comedy of errors. Most critics had predicted a whitewash, but Lakes showed little flair. It took more than 20 minutes before the home side finally found a gap, and David Smith ran in a 6-0 lead. That laid the foundations for the rest of the match. Brendan George built on the score, but with the finals starting next week, Lakes' form was far from their best this season, and another concern is Ewan McGrady. He was taken from the field after injuring his ankle. The Newcastle Wildfires were fighting for end-of-season pride at the number one sports ground today, down 24-5 early in the second half. The forward pack hinted at a comeback. 12 points in it, but the Pirates bounced back 5 minutes later to extend the margin again and put the game out of reach. In the Newcastle Rugby Union, Merewether beat University, the Waratahs flogged Hamilton, Wanderers edged out Mayfield East, and Singleton remain on top of the ladder with a 4-point victory over Maitland. Deloraine has advanced in the NBN Soccer League, beating Wallsend in this afternoon's elimination final. The Eagles started the match favourites, and despite an early scare, Edgeworth dominated the opening half, scoring their first goal courtesy of Danny Gordon in the 6th minute. Plenty of other chances also for Deloraine as the side marched on another week, while the Red Devils season is over. Newcastle has confirmed its reputation as the team to beat in the Division 1 Inter-District Netball competition. The Flyers finished the minor rounds with a 5-goal victory over second-place Campbelltown. In today's other match, Ku-ring-gai upset Charlestown. The sides were playing for the last spot in the finals at Charlestown netball courts, and the visitors were on top throughout. Holding a 1-point lead at quarter-time, Ku-ring-gai went on with the job to knock Charlestown out of the competition. Finals start next week. Souths also had no troubles finding the net today in the men's hockey premiership. The league favourites beat Maitland 4-0 to remain undefeated in the competition. And day one of the state softball league, the Castle Lakers beaten by the Sharks 2-1. A big crowd at Curry's Boot Stadium this afternoon for day one of the Newcastle Rugby League finals, and on the paddock both sides rose to the occasion. Buoyed by the club's win in reserve grade, the Bulldogs continued where the second team left off with crunching defence. But a weight of possession had to take its toll, and after 8 minutes, Jason McGrady backed himself. A mere formality for Paul Scoffgard, and the visitors were up 6-0 before Rick Ryan landed one himself to bring the margin back to 4. 10 minutes in the bin for Matt Parrish, and the locals had more to cheer about before Craig Melia made the most of the 12-man opposition to put the Bulldogs on top. A mistake from the kickoff presented the locals with another 6 tackles, but full of running, powerful centre Glenn Messenger needed only one. The boot of Rick Ryan extended the lead, and despite a gallant effort to come back, the Scorpions fell short, their season over, while Curry lived to fight another round next weekend. The Knights' battle is all uphill.
We must win the remainder of the games, the 4 games. If not, you can forget it and we can start planning for next season.
A loss in the Steel City clash deep in Newcastle's slump, Malcolm really concedes it's not looking good.
Yeah, there's a lot of defensive problems there, but I think the team just lack confidence, to be honest, and that's not such an easy thing to turn around.
Newcastle has 7 days to get the finals campaign back on track. In the remaining matches, they play Parramatta, the Roosters, Reds and Sharks.
The only way you can get that confidence back into the side is from a success, and the sooner it happens, the better. We are in a slump, and we've got to dig our way out of it.
Searching for answers, the Knights boss admits everyone is under pressure, no more so the team's representative players.
And maybe things have come too quick for them. Maybe things have arrived and they think we've made it. But, you know, we've got to dig deep now, and times like this, it really does find out what a player's character's like and how mentally tough he is.
The team to travel to Parramatta for the first of the do-or-die games will be named tomorrow.
First report. That would be nice.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
The Falcons are in fine spirits. The players keen to head south and take on the Tigers. It'll be tough on Gaze and Bradkey after the high of the Atlanta games, plus being away from their NBL team for such a break.
They haven't trained with their team for a month and a half. They'll probably have a bit of finding out to do again.
Last year it was a win apiece between the Falcons and the Tigers, the home court advantage, the difference between the two sides. On form, Newcastle is the outsider, the Falcons on 8th and the Tigers 1st. Newcastle will have their hands full, not just with the stars like Gaze and Copeland. Butch Hayes says every one of the Tigers can bite.
I think the key, though, will be just to limit their lesser likes. It's when their lesser likes get 10 and 12 points, it's when they become a real dangerous team.
The match against Amy Cup leaders Warringah, the number 1 sports ground, was never going to be easy for Newcastle, but the Wildfires did everything to cause an upset. Good spoiling tactics throughout the match restricted scoring opportunities, and at half-time the locals were in front by 11 points to 10. But the second half belonged to the Green Rats. First a penalty conversion, then 2 unanswered tries sealed the visitors' victory. In basketball, Melbourne has maintained its position on top of the NBL ladder, beating Newcastle last night. The Tigers won 98-93. The loss leaves Newcastle out of the top 8. The Newcastle International Hockey Centre is hosting the Regional Girls Championships this weekend. The under-14s and under-12s divisions attracting 15 teams from across the state. Locals fared well on day one. The Newcastle under-14s team dominated its match against the Upper Hunter, Casey Caveskull, helping the home side to a 3-0 victory. And in the Women's State Softball League, the Castle Lakers have won their first game in today's big double-header, 2-1 over Wollongong. The side plays the ACT Academy tonight.
The Wildfires were all getting along with their training skills, and also scoring a lot of tries as well into rugby union. Also, their visitors threatened to fight back. But thankfully, the Wildfires certainly tried to stop them.
Lambton High drew first blood, but Farrer High hit back 20 minutes into the game with this effort from Mark Hardy. It was to be the first of 3 tries in the first half for Hardy, the centre crashing over for his hat-trick. Farrer's forwards dominated centre play, tearing through some light Lambton defence. Lambton allowed the opposition to stand an offloading tackles, a try to Farrer's Michael Steiger, putting the Tamworth boys ahead 18-4. Lambton failed to regroup early in the second half, allowing Farrer a 24-point buffer. The local boys rallied late in the game but couldn't make up the difference. Farrer now plays Sydney's Kingsgrove High in the semi-final.
Souths were humbled by the Seagulls at Carl Oval last weekend. The 35-10 loss forced the side into do-or-die matches from here on in.
Well, if we don't win tomorrow, that's it. We're on a fishing trip, so we're pretty keen to win the game, yeah.
The player of the year himself will be the key to the Lions' chances tomorrow. Last week he was shut down by the Seagulls, and the Bulldogs have promised similar treatment.
Yeah, definitely the key. He leads them around the park pretty well, but he had a good strong pack of forwards, which forwards always win semi-finals.
The winner meets the loser of tonight's major semi-final next week. The business end of the season also in the NBN Soccer League, Highfields play Hamilton. The winner is through to the grand final, the Wolves the favourites, after last week's 4-1 victory over Deloraine. A big weekend for the Adamstown Rosebuds, tonight hosting Leichhardt, while on Sunday it's an away game against Warringah. Rugby Union in Newcastle is out to put a halt to Manly's charge at the AAMI Cup finals tomorrow. The Wildfires more than held their own last weekend against flag favourites Warringah and plan to use their good spoiling tactics again.
One man that we've got to watch is Willie off in Galway. He's playing good football. Manly have won their last 3 games, but I think we're very confident and will cause an upset.
And in softball, round 3 this weekend of the State League, the women play the Power Raiders and the men meet the Panthers. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Newcastle has been flying high all season. The team has led the Inter-District League from start to finish, and on Saturday it's the grand final.
They've been very consistent this year, which has been very good, very pleasing.
It's been a low-key preparation, the team a mix of youth and experience. A week off and everything is shaping up well for the trip to Sydney. The Flyers will play Ku-ring-gai, the big movers in the competition. They knocked Charlestown out of the league 3 weeks ago and are turning into the surprise packet.
They've come from 5th in the last round to 4th, and they've knocked off 3rd and 2nd. And we haven't seen them since the second game of the second rounds.
Despite that, the Flyers will enter the match favourites after their faultless efforts during the season. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
It was right up at a lunch, and of course it was up at the Newcastle Rugby League.
The announcement last night brought spontaneous cheers and pats on the back from his teammates.
Oh, mate, I'm over the moon. Can't believe it.
Forward was 6 points clear of Toronto Workers' second rower Chris Cole. The award has extra significance for Forward, who missed 6 premiership games after fracturing a cheekbone. With the award firmly in his grasp, Forward now has his sights on this weekend's clash with an in-form Curry.
I'll swap anything for a grand final win, so hopefully the boys can perform on the weekend and we'll, stop Curry winning their 4th premiership.
And the Rookie of the Year, the up-and-coming Maitland player's future looks secure. He's set for a trial with the Newcastle Knights after winning the prize.
Newcastle's recent trip to the Gold Coast proved to be an absolute thriller. Down for most of the game, the Falcons found plenty in the dying stages. Scott McGregor, their hero, when he forced a foul and the match for the visitors.
I'd say we'll be trying to set a score, but hopefully it won't be as close as last time. We'll win by 20 this time, hopefully.
A loss last week and the Falcons dropped out of the 8, but with plenty of tricks still up their sleeves, Newcastle will start its big home streak cautiously confident.
It's a game we've got to get, and a game we can get, and that's our only concern right now. After we do that, we'll go for the rest of them.
Given a rest by coach Tom Wiseman yesterday, the Falcons were fresh at today's light training run, but all are fit to bounce back into gear tomorrow night. No more so Marty McLean, he plays his 100th NBL game.
Yeah, it's always good, I guess, so maybe later on in life you look back and say, oh, I did that. I'm pretty happy that, they've all been with the Falcons too.
The team's on court at the Entertainment Centre from 7:30. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. On paper, everything favoured West last night, the best defensive and attacking record, the home ground advantage, and fresh from a week's rest, but the break did nothing for the Rosellas tackling. Jeff Walter's solo effort put the visitors in front 6-0. A high tackle 20 minutes in and the home side was reduced to 12 men for the rest of the match, but they still managed to find an overlap and Peter Jenner made it 6-4. Back from the break, Ewan McGrady spilled the beans and the Rosellas were presented with a gift 4-pointer. But the Lakes halfback found sweet revenge moments later, saving a certain try. Nothing could stop quick thinking and sheer determination from Tony Price. Down 6 and in the shadows of full time, a dash from dummy half and the Seagulls locked it up. Sent out for another 20 minutes, the field goal became the option. Steve Storey gave the minor premiers the edge. But Lakes took the running approach. Ewan McGrady slipped a pass to David Smith and the powerful centre turned on the pace for his 18th try of the season. A try apiece in the last 10 minutes traded the lead on both occasions, but Lakes got home only just 24-23. And this afternoon at Townsend Oval, Souths and Curry met in a sudden death showdown. Souths led 8-0 after only a couple of minutes and nearly trampled their way to an even bigger lead. But after weathering the storm, the Bulldogs also found space, running in 2 quick tries and a 12-8 lead. Curry bombed a number of other chances but held on to win. They play Wests next weekend. Manly boasts one of the strongest forward packs in the AAMI Cup, and up front the big men found plenty of ball in this afternoon's match at the number 1 sports ground. Keen to use their power, the visitors played all over the Wildfires early on, but the home side was first on the board with a penalty conversion. Led by international Willie O, Manly came back, but the match finished in a thrilling draw. In the Newcastle Rugby Union, the Waratahs thumped Merriweather. Softball and the Power Raiders beat the Castle Lakers today, and in soccer a 3-1 loss last night for the Adamstown Rosebuds. The Gold Coast were playing for pride. Newcastle for a spot in the 8 and the Falcons' Scotty Ninnis assisted to start the match in style. David Van Dyke kept the home side on top, but second shy of the first change, Ira Bowman hinted at a Rollers comeback. It was a sign of things to come. The visitors dominated play for the next 2 quarters. Bowman again one of the main destroyers. 17 points down and the Falcons coach Tom Wiseman was searching for answers. With that, Newcastle battled the clock, pulling in the deficit. Lockie Armfield for 3, then Butch Hayes levelled it up. Scores locked at 102. Overtime was needed to split the deadlock. The Falcons hit the lead early and never looked back, keeping their top 8 hopes alive. It was a do-or-die battle for the Knights today, and Andrew John started well with the boot, landing 2 quick penalties and a 4-0 lead. Buoyed by a big home crowd, Newcastle had most of the early possession, and when Mark Glanville found Keith Beecham, the locals were up by 10. At the other end of the park, everyone was joining in the Knights' defence. Even referee Manson did his bit, while Robbie O'Davis needed no help in attack, selling the Roosters a dummy. John Simon backed himself and the Roosters broke through, 16-6 at half-time. Back from the break, Newcastle needed only 10 minutes to extend its lead. Billy Peden joined the scorers, and from there they never surrendered. The winning drought finally over.
The way we put it together today, I'm just glad I can pay my mortgage for another week. Yeah, it's been a while.
Highfields lost to the Warriors a fortnight ago and were determined not to make the same mistake today. But it was 0-0 after 80 minutes, and still after extra time, a penalty shootout deciding the winner. Rugby Union and Maitland upset the Wanderers today. In softball, the Castle Lakers beat Penrith. And in surfing, the New South Wales Rip Curl junior titles finished up at Redhead Beach today. Competitors from across the state battled small but clean surf up to half a metre. In the under-14s, the Mid-North Coast Sean Canstor won the title after demolishing his opposition in both the semis and final. For a side struggling with only one win in 9 matches, it's unwelcome news. Some of the Knights' key players are in doubt for the weekend's home clash with the Roosters, but the team is remaining optimistic.
Got players down with a virus, but there's plenty going around at the moment. But I'm hoping that the players will be right for Sunday.
Monday night's loss to Parramatta has been hard to handle. The Knights slipped to 11th place in the league and almost out of calculations for the finals.
It's been a difficult week, bringing them around. They got their heads down on Monday, but so that was only to be expected after such a big effort and no real reward at the end of it.
But to their credit, the Knights are determined to bounce back and spoil the Roosters' top 2 finish.
We trained well last night and the enthusiasm's there, so it's going to be a real good contest on Sunday. The Roosters are obviously in good form, but I think that we're good enough to take them.
With Brad Godden succumbing to his old shoulder injury, Brett Grogan moves to the centres while young Matthew Gidley runs on as wing. Jonathan Upton, NBN News. Natalie Ward returned home from the Olympics in the early hours of this morning, still overwhelmed at the Atlanta experience.
It was great. It's sort of overwhelming at the moment. I don't know what to think, but it was a great feeling at the time when we got presented the medals.
At only 20, Natalie was the youngest member of the Australian softball team. Today, her first chance to sit back and reflect. The Aussies won bronze at the Games. What a standout with bat and ball. No one could be prouder than her parents.
Oh, it was tremendous. We are certainly a proud parent. There's no doubt about that. It's the first medal I've ever seen of any colour. It was great to sort of have Natalie bring it home.
For now, it's a well-deserved break and a chance to catch up on a newfound fame. From across Australia, the Olympian received hundreds of letters during the Games. Most offered support, while others promised love. With the international commitments over for a while, the 20-year-old will go back to a former club, the Castle Lakers. With softball yet to be given the green light for Sydney 2000, there are plenty of Olympic memories, the 2 lasting ones, the medal and that party.
Partying was great. I had a lot of fun.
Jonathan Upton, NBN News. After a terrible run of losses in the Optus Cup, the Knights finally scored the competition points yesterday. The winning drought over, the finals hopes alive.
The team's good enough, and I think yesterday would have been a great confidence booster for us.
Reilly's focus may now be on the Reds game this weekend, but in the back of his mind is the final round clash against the Sharks.
I thought that we'd be playing Cronulla at the back end of this season, and the result would be to get in the top 4, not to sustain a top 8 place.
It was a great day out for Newcastle. The reserves also scored a convincing victory. The second team scored its 14th win of the season, and coach Peter Sharp couldn't be happier.
Yeah, we're getting it back together now, so I think we'll be a definite threat coming into the year.
The reserves' win came at a cost.
We lost Scott Asmus with a leg injury and Jason Marshall with a leg injury. They won't play again this year. Stephen Crow's got a shoulder injury, so we'll have a new front row this week.
After a strong performance, the Knights managed to end its season 1996 with a win. And of course, it was up against North Sydney. It was marvellous up at the right up in the NBN Soccer League Grand Final. While there was another tie. There still had to be plenty of chances to be decided. As the Highfields were crowned premiers. Also, it became huge for the for a lot of clubs. But also, who will go through to the big one? The Group 21 Rugby League Grand Final was decided for 1996. Muswellbrook up against Aberdeen. And of course, Aberdeen scored. But Albert missed a conversion to kick a goal. Then Muswellbrook scored. and were later crowned the 1996 premiers of Group 21 Rugby League. Every shop across Newcastle and the Hunter was covered in blue and gold, just to celebrate. And of course, they all had to wait for and of course, it was it was time to have a grand final of the Newcastle Rugby League. And of course, their team, Lakes United, were hoping to win. And of course, the local restaurants were all to celebrate. And so too did the local shops. The Waratah, the one, Newcastle's Wildfires did everything they could, but however, they couldn't get past Manly first. That was until the next. However, the Newcastle one got into the good spot. However, the local AFL one was the best. It was just the most important one. However, the best important competitions got into the best, as there were wins, losses, as well as the best opportunities. Meantime, in Newcastle Rugby Union, Mayweather hammered the Waratahs 14-6. Also into Newcastle Aussie rules, Nelson Bay hammered Warners Bay 83-57. It was a do-or-die battle between Lakes United and Western Suburbs in a preliminary final of Newcastle Rugby League. And because of that, Curry were the first to score. And of course, who will join Lakes United in the grand final for 1996? It was a do-or-die battle between Curry and Western Suburbs. Curry scored first. Then a lot of biffo and punches were involved. Then Western Suburbs had a player sent to the bin. Then more drama was unfolding. And of course, West will meet Newcastle, and of course West will meet Lakes United in the grand final. Elsewhere into Newcastle Rugby Union, and Mayweather has defeated Maitland 42-3. And of course the Greens were just too strong for Maitland, who were just too good. Still with happiness after their inaugural victory against West in the Newcastle Rugby League Grand Final for 1996. And of course, thousands of Lakes United fans and supporters quickly gathered into local pubs and clubs to celebrate. And of course, Lakes United crowned the 1996 Newcastle Rugby League Grand Final premiers. And of course, the trophy all but theirs. And of course, Lakes' drought all but broken. It was marvellous right up for local rugby union. It was up in Newcastle today. And of course, it was time to come back for the thrills and spills. And also for the tries, as well as for the drop-ons and drop-outs. Both teams were struggling first, before Singleton eventually scored first. But thankfully, they were not giving up just yet. The grand final of the NBN Soccer League for 1996 was huge. The Highfields were tackling their rivals and scoring goals. It was right in the decider. And of course, something had to be good. Meantime, in the Tui Second Division Grand Final, South Cardiff has beaten Budgie 3 points to 1. And also, it's become huge. 1996, of course, was the year of Lakes United, but also Lakes United ended one of the most painful premiership droughts in history. And of course, they managed to secure a victory over Western Suburbs in the grand final. Smith managed to score one of the best tries of all. Even though Western Suburbs tried to fight back, but it was not enough. Also in other grand finals, the reserve grade, Western Suburbs defeated Curry 20-6, while in third grade, South Newcastle defeated Western Suburbs 8-0. Spectacular, of course. And of course, go the Knights in the NRLW Grand Final. That's it for now. My name's Conklin McLeod. Good night.